Message. We're in a new series. We're in a new series today, and we are going to start off with this verse. Philippians 1:12 through 14 says this. And I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that everything that has happened to me here has helped me spread the good news. For everyone here, including the whole palace guard, knows that I am in chains because of Christ and because of my imprisonment. Most of the believers here have gained confidence and boldly speak God's message without fear. Making our mark. Making our mark is what this series is called, where God is calling us to do something. Why am I here? Not like physically here, not why am I standing on this stage right now. Why am I here is a question that many of us have in our lifetimes. We go through, we struggle with our purpose, we struggle with our why. It's one of life's most important questions that we ask. And deep down, we all have a desire to do something good, to leave our mark on this world, to leave a legacy. We want to make our mark on our family and our loved ones, and ultimately leave the world just a little bit better than when we got here. Why am I here? What's my purpose? It's something that we all struggle with or wrestle with in order to avoid irrelevance as the world passes us by. And in order to not be irrelevant, our goal simply comes down to what am I going to do in this world? What are you going to do in this world? But as we live our life, as we go about our daily business, as we go about our jobs and our relationships, those things seem to get more and more complicated. They seem to really frustrate us more than they should. So if you're here today, if you're listening online, if you're in this room, if you're listening to this way in the future, I want you to hear something today. Are you ready? Here it is. It's going to be up on the screen. Here's what it is. God wants your legacy to be more than your circumstance. God wants your legacy, the things that you leave behind, He wants it to be more than just the things that you've encountered in your lifetime. I hear the words, living your best life. Anybody know what that means? Anybody heard that before? No, nobody. Okay, interesting. Well, living your best life, it's this utopia idea of, oh man, everything is just going to be great. Wouldn't life be awesome? Like, honestly, wouldn't life be awesome if we could just live our best life? If we could live in this utopia mindset that we have where our situations and our circumstances that we have, man, they weren't the things that bogged us down. They weren't the things that frustrated us. They weren't the things that we ended up spending a lot of our time and effort and energy on. Like, we could just legitimately live our best life without hurt or disappointment, brokenness, these things that plague our world. However, it's not an option. It's not, Jesus even talks about that. Jesus says in John 16, He says, in this world you will have troubles. Thanks for destroying that idea of utopia, Jesus. Because what I wanted to do is I just wanted to live a life where I could legitimately be myself. I could live my best life if I wasn't going through these difficult times. And I know some of us in here, Maybe you haven't gone through those difficult times. Maybe you've graduated, you've started a family, maybe you're even partway into your career, and you're just going, man, is this all life has to offer? Is this, man, this is easy. This is easy. I know I've had some setbacks, but some of the things that I've had setbacks, they're not really difficult. A few of you in here started to chuckle when I said that, because maybe that was you. That was you one day. You were sitting there and you were going, man, life is just rocking and rolling. I can deal with this. That's how I woke up on August 20th, 2016. I woke up that way, and I had a family, and I had dealt with some heartache. I had dealt with some loss, but man, everything was actually moving pretty good. But on August 20th, 2016, Kristen woke up not feeling very well. She woke up, she wasn't feeling all that great, so I decided to be a great husband, and I took the kids and I said, I'm just going to go, you stay, and you just take some time for yourself. get better. We didn't know, what was going on. It was kind of a stomach thing, kind of a head thing. We weren't really sure. So I took the kids, and me and my sister Amanda, we took the kids out for the day and just spent really most of the day there. And as soon as I walked back into the door, I realized that something wasn't right. I realized that this was more than just a sickness or a stomach flu or something like that. So I rushed her to the emergency room. And after doing a ton of tests and hours waiting, we finally realized what was going on. She had a tennis ball-sized tumor in her colon that needed emergency surgery. It was the moment where I sat there and I was like, okay, life. Now, this is starting to get real. These circumstances that I'm in, they're starting to get a little bit real. And I'll never forget the doctor coming in and explaining to us what's going on. They set us down and said, you have stage 3 colon cancer, and we need to do emergency surgery tomorrow. If you've ever dealt with somebody who's been diagnosed with cancer, you know the feeling that you get when you hear those words. Everything immediately flashed through my mind of what could go wrong and how life is being unfair. And we've got these 3 kids, and at that point we hadn't adopted our son Gage, and everything just immediately flooded through my mind of this isn't how life was supposed to go. This is not the circumstance I'm supposed to be in. As the weeks went by following the surgery, they started, the doctors were shocked that this type of cancer was found in somebody that of her age. It's extremely rare. So they submitted her to all these different tests and these genetic testing things that tried to decide if the cancer was actually genetic. Because she had a history of cancer on her side, and so they wanted to see if some of the genetic markers actually were one of those things that's why she had cancer. It was through this process that I really started to learn a lot about what the medical community differentiates between genetic and familial disease. There's a lot of genetic markers in our life that predispose us to certain illnesses. Type 1 diabetes, cancer, heart disease. There's a lot of these genetic markers that medical professionals can look at and say, because you have this gene or a combination of these genes in your DNA or throughout your family history, it's a hereditary thing that you are most likely going to experience this. But as they did all of these tests on her for weeks and weeks and weeks, they couldn't find any of those genetic markers. And so what they said is this is most likely a familial cancer. This is something that we can't put a pin in it. It might be something genetic that we just haven't discovered yet, but most likely, within your DNA or within your lifestyle, there's something that gives your family a higher risk of this type of disease than the general population. They discovered that many of these medical issues appear to be genetic, but they can't find the link. So medical professionals are now linking many illnesses, like the ones that we mentioned, that seem to have a disproportionate effect within a family, and they call it the familial link. Either a mutation that they haven't discovered, or most likely a lifestyle or a habit that a family partakes in that enhances the likelihood of these diseases in people. Dr. Donald Lloyd Jones, professor of preventative medicine, epidemiology, and cardiology, and pediatrics, he studies and teaches as a professor at the University of Northwestern. He says it like this: while many of these kinds of diseases have genetic components to them, by far the biggest factor is lifestyle. Your daily habits, those are up to you no matter what's in your family medical history. For most people, a healthy lifestyle trumps inherited risk. So Jesus goes back and he says, you will experience trials of many kinds. It's going to happen. We are predisposed from it. From the fall of man, we are all going to experience these difficult circumstances that come our way. So the life of the utopia that we all dream of is gone. But here's what he says. As we're going through our life, as we're going through the difficult circumstances, the question that we need to ask is, how can we remember the story we want to tell in the midst of the thick fog of our emotions in difficult situations? How can you remember the story that you want to tell? Here's how it is. John 16, he starts off by saying, in this world you will have trouble. But then he says these 8 words, and these are the 8 words that I want you to cling on to today. But take heart, I have overcome the world. But take heart, I have overcome the world. In those difficult situations, he's sitting down. He's got his disciples sitting there. The end of his ministry is getting ready to come up. And he sits down and he says, hey, disciples, the road's about to get bumpy here. There's going to be a lot of things that try to throw you off course. So remember this. Take heart, I have overcome the world. He is greater than our situations. He looks at his disciples, he looks at his followers, and he says, I'm greater than the situations that you're going to experience. And I was like, man, how awesome is that, just to feel like warm and wrapped up in that hug. But the problem is the disciples didn't know what was going on. The disciples didn't realize that the experiences of life, that their circumstances were all about to change. And God was telling them, Jesus was telling them, I'm going to be with you in that circumstances, or in those circumstances. He says, you need to figure out the story that you want to tell, because I'm going to be there with you no matter what happens in your life. So how do we tell the story that we want to tell? See, we decide that we want to make our mark. We decide the story we want to tell, the legacy that we want to leave. And despite our circumstances, in spite of our circumstances, how do we tell that story? Imagine being faced with a choice. As a single individual, to have consensual sexual relations with someone who is married, or refuse to do that and be thrown into prison and face the death penalty. Now, I know some of you guys are like, wow, he jumped really quick there. Like, what's he talking about? This is actually a story that we're going to look at because Joseph was the favorite of his father. Joseph was a favorite of his father, and man, his daddy just loved him so much. He gave him all the gifts and gave him all the feels and gave him all of the emotion because he was the best. Joseph was his father's son from his favorite wife. Don't have a favorite wife. It never gets you anywhere unless you only have one and then have a favorite wife, okay? But here's the thing. Joseph sat there, and he's just kind of receiving all this love from daddy, and man, it just made his brothers angry. And if you know the story of Joseph, I'm going to recap it real quick for you, but it made his brothers so angry that as Joseph was coming to check on his brothers, they saw his silhouette coming over the ridge, and they were just filled with anger and hatred for their brother, and they decided in that moment to kill him. But they chickened out. They said, you know what, we're just going to toss him in this deep and dark well. And they threw him in there while they figured out what to do. And in that moment, they saw a caravan of slave traders walking by. And they said, let's sell him. We'll take care of our problem. We'll clear our conscience because we're gonna do this. So they sold him for pennies on the dollar. They could have gotten a lot more for him. They said, we just want to be rid of him. And Joseph is now thrown into this circumstance in his life where he's far away from home, where he's most likely never going to experience anything familiar ever again. He's never going to see his family again. He's sold into slavery to this man named Potiphar. And he decides that he's going to work his best for his new master. And so he puts his best foot forward and he tries his best. And as Potiphar starts to realize, wow, this guy's good, he gives him more and more responsibilities. And Potiphar continues to give him things. And these things keep doing well and they prosper, so he gives him more things and more things and more things until Joseph is the second in command of the entire household. Of Potiphar's entire estate, Joseph is doing good. He's probably about 19, 21, somewhere in there, in that age range. And man, his life that he thought was absolutely crumbling, this terrible circumstance that he was in, is now actually turning out to be a pretty good story. It says he was in charge of everything. The only thing Potiphar could decide is what he wanted to eat, the food that he ate. And Potiphar noticed that Joseph was doing a good job. But Potiphar wasn't the only one who noticed. Potiphar's wife noticed him too. And the scripture talks about how he was a good-looking man. And Potiphar's wife noticed that too. And Potiphar's wife started to try to seduce Joseph day in and day out. And according to scriptures in Genesis, she continued to try to seduce him. And Joseph, realizing this, started to kind of paraphrase this story. And he's like, Mrs. Potiphar, she comes at him again. He's like, listen, Mrs. Potiphar, I came to this area as a slave, and your husband trusted me with everything. He purchased me as a nothing, and he has promoted me to everything. He has shown so much kindness, so much grace, so much towards me that, man, I could never do anything like that. What's the point of me working up to where I am at and treating my master as though he doesn't exist? And then Joseph says this, with me in charge, my master doesn't concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns is entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. In other words, he's like, I don't want to add adultery to my resume. I don't want to add adultery to this idea of this story that's actually turning out to be a pretty good story. You see, Joseph had this uncanny ability to replay his future story in his mind out loud for himself to hear. Story number 1, your husband gave me the opportunity that I could have never dreamed of, so I was faithful to him and God for watching out to me. Or story number 2, your husband gave me the opportunity I never dreamed would come my way, so I took advantage of him and had an affair with his wife, dishonoring my God. See, Joseph knew his decisions. What if we made this a skill in our life, right? What if we made this a skill as a part of our life to actually verbally talk out the things that we're going through, the decisions that we're making? However, a lot of my stories don't end up like this. The other day I was fighting with my kids. We had told them we were having steamed broccoli for dinner as the vegetable, and I don't want to eat steamed broccoli, and eat your broccoli. And my wife looks at him and says, you guys have to eat all the broccoli on your plate. She didn't give them that much. She's not a slave driver. She didn't give them that much, but they had to eat all their broccoli on their plate. And then she left me in charge to make sure that I know. I was now responsible for going, you have to eat all the broccoli on your plate. And if you've ever been in the situation, it's real. Man, this is real life. You're sitting there going, oh no. Do I have to eat all the broccoli? How many bites? I'm dying. Yes, you have to eat all your broccoli. And after what seems like 75 hours of wrestling with them about this, I walk into the bedroom and Kristen's there, and it's like, they ate, broccoli has nutritional value, right, Kristen? And she's like, yeah. Well, they ate some of it, so they probably got their nutritional value. They don't need to eat the rest, right? Yeah, they need to eat the rest. Right, but they ate some of the broccoli on their plate. I said they need to eat all of it. Yeah. And it's this frustration of what's going on. Like, I don't want to make them eat their broccoli. Why? Somebody tell me why I didn't want to do it. Maybe you've been there. They don't like it. I don't want to have to deal with it anymore. I want my situation to turn better because I don't like the circumstance that I'm in. I don't like the circumstance that I have to be there. And as I looked at my wife and she looked at me, she said, we're going to be a united front. And we're going to raise our kids not to be picky. We're going to raise our kids to eat their vegetables, and we're going to raise our kids to be polite kids. Aren't we, Nathan? And I was like, yes, ma'am. I walked back out. I am so lucky to be married to somebody who can see the bigger picture and actually rationalize it in the moment that we're going through. But so many of my moments are not like that. So many of my moments are not like Joseph's moments where he is out there saying, this is going to be the story if you allow your circumstances to control you. Your legacy is going to be what your circumstances allow you to do. See, we're not a slave to our circumstances. You become a slave to your decisions in those circumstances. When the story we want to tell is not being told, When the story we want to tell, we're not telling because the decisions we're making are only benefiting our right now as opposed to the story we want to tell. God says we're going to have the difficult times. We are going to have the difficult times. What are you going to do in those difficult times, though? What story would you like to tell? What mark do you want to leave? What legacy do you want to leave? But take heart, I've overcome the world. I went, quite a few years ago, I went on a hiking trip through the Appalachian Trail. And the Appalachian Trail is a hiking trail through the eastern United States, extending about 2,200 miles between Maine and Georgia. And it was carefully thought out and carefully planned. And every so often, there are these marks on the AT, these white marks. They look similar to this along the trail. And just about any time that there's a fork in the road, or any time that you don't know the direction that you're going or you should go, or you're wondering, where's the trail? I can't find it. There's one of these marks. Now, this is intentional. When you walked in here today and saw this, no one sat there and went, that was probably an accident that was put there. It was probably just left there as someone was painting something, painting the ceiling fans in your house. Do you paint ceiling fans? I don't think so. Well, you were painting something in your house, and the white paint just got on there like that. That's not an accident. You see, we know that the mark we're striving for is a mark that we're able to make despite the circumstances that we're in. And those marks were put there on that trail in order for you, whoever comes along that way, to say, this is the direction that was go. You have a choice to make. You can go this direction or you can go that direction. This is to keep you on the straight and narrow. I think it's absolutely great, because if we go back to the verse we read at the very beginning in Philippians 1:12, Paul was actually talking about this. Paul was writing this, and he said, and I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that everything has happened to me, that everything that has happened to me here has helped me spread the good news. For everyone here, including the whole palace guard, knows that I am in chains because of Christ. Paul was writing this to the church while he was actually chained to a prison guard. While he was actually chained to a prison guard, he sat there and this is my situation. These are my circumstances that I'm in. But man, I know my goal. My goal is clear. My goal is to spread the good news. You see, chains cause clarity. Chains cause clarity. Viktor Frankl says this: the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in a given circumstance. In Paul's mind, he wasn't chained to the guard was chained to him. The guard was chained to him because that guard couldn't go anywhere, and Paul's message was to preach and spread the gospel. I'm sure at the beginning of Paul's ministry, he got super excited and super engaged, and he was like, I'm gonna win the world for God. I'm gonna go on missionary trips, and I'm gonna plant churches, and there are gonna be hundreds and thousands of people. 10,001 people is my goal, is my target for who I'm gonna reach. But it wasn't a number, it was a mission, it was a purpose to spread the gospel. And whenever he realized that, when he realized while he was in chains, all of the circumstances that Paul went through, when he realized that he was chained to a guard, he didn't see a problem, he saw an opportunity to continue his purpose, to leave a mark, to say, listen, no matter where you are, this is what you are doing. See, a lot of times we have a tendency to complain about our calling. Complain about the things in our life that we're engaging with, that are engaging with us, the circumstances, and if only I could break free, I'd live a legacy worth remembering. If only I could break free from this prison guard or these circumstances that are holding me down, I could do that. But man, when we get around those chains of our circumstances, I want them to cause clarity in our life, because God has put us here to leave a mark on the world. You see, and a lot of times we think we need a miracle. But I think a lot of people, they don't need a miracle. They just need a mark. People don't need the miracle. They need a mark in their life to show them where people have gone before. Because believe it or not, when you're late at night in a dark wilderness and you've went off on all these different trails, on the Appalachian Trail, the only thing that brings you comfort is to come back and find a mark, because it's a mark of where somebody has been where you want to go. And when you leave your mark, when you tell your story, when you decide, here's my purpose is to bring God glory, boom, you're leaving your mark in those difficult circumstances. People are going to come back and they're going to find that, and it's going to give them the hope that they need. That's going to give them the hope that they need. The more things we do with the others, the better we are setting them up to overcome the hereditary nature of making easy choices in difficult circumstances. You see, that your loved ones, yourself, the people, they're going to have difficult circumstances. And the question remains, where are they going to turn when they have those difficult circumstances? And as a people, if we can start leaving our mark, if we can start leaving a legacy of in the difficult circumstances, of in those trials, of in those tough times, we can leave a mark, a lifestyle, a habit of making the right choices, of talking those choices out. Here's option one. Here's story one. This is how it could end up. Or here's the better story. Here's how it could end up. This one's going to get you where you're going to go. This is going to get you somewhere. And man, as we move away from it, wouldn't it be awesome to be able to leave our mark on a community, on a society, on our loved ones, for our children and our children's children, that we made a difficult choice in a difficult situation? We chose the better story. See, we complain about the things that give us calling. We want the utopia of an easy life, but in actuality, there isn't an easy life. All of our lives are going to have difficult circumstances in. So the question that I want to ask you, the question I'm posing to you today is, how are you going to leave your mark? It's choosing your story despite the captivity of your circumstances, despite the captivity that your circumstances place you in. We need to know our purpose. It's only when we know our purpose that we can clearly make a mark. Otherwise, we're going to go anywhere the wind takes us. The circumstances say, well, this is an easy situation, or it's easy to know what's going on here. I want us to be like Paul and make those decisions that, man, they don't seem tough. You have that personality, that perseverance to say, listen, I'm not chained to my circumstance. My circumstance are chained to me, and they've got to deal with me. Paul saw the guard chained to him. Better story. Joseph believed his story mattered when everyone else told him it didn't. Better story. You have two stories that you can tell. Tell the better story. Choose the better story. I want to have you stand with us today as we close. And I want to close with this. In Romans 12:1, it says this: offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. We're not going to close today with the band rocking us out with a song of worship. What we're going to do is we're going to close with us, a people of God, walking out into a world, living a life of worship. Because this is our spiritual act of worship, is to live the better story. No matter what circumstance that you are tied to, no matter what is going through your life right now, no matter what thing you might think you're chained to, you can live the better story. As you're hearing this today, we have the choice to make. What story are you telling? God wants us to be a people that tell His story in every circumstance that we're in. A righteous story, a holy story, a story that matters. And when we leave that legacy of telling the right story to our family and our friends with our actions, man, we're setting them up for an absolute powerhouse, to be an overcomer of their obstacles, of the things in our life. In this world, you will have troubles. But I want you to say these next 8 words with me as we dismiss today. But take heart. God has overcome the world. You are dismissed. You are loved. Have a great day. The prayer team is available up front.